this video, I would like to discuss with you a crucial issue for negotiators: how to evaluate the quality of a deal. At the end of a negotiation, you have to decide whether to say yes or no. Either you accept the deal, and then it is a serious commitment for yourself and for your organization. Or you say no to the deal, and you will have to do with your solutions away from the negotiation table. Either way, you will be accountable. Either way, you don't want to regret the wrong move. So, when a potential deal is on the table, do not rush to a conclusion. Deal or no deal? Step back and think. Remember that the purpose of negotiation is not to reach a deal. It is to reach the best possible deal. Indeed, there are bad deals to which you should have said no to. As a result, in the last stage of a negotiation, when the potential deal is on the table, I advise you to go through the following checklist, which can really help you make the right move. This 10-point checklist is based on the 3 dimensions of any negotiation which we have identified earlier in this MOOC. People, who is involved in this negotiation; problem, what is at stake in this negotiation; process, how do we run this negotiation. Now, on the people dimension, 3 checks. First, check that the negotiation has maintained or improved the relationship between the parties around the table. If this deal is at the expense of the relationship, it could be the last deal you ever make with this partner. Think long term. It is still time to do something to improve the relationship. And this we call sweeten the deal. Second, check that the deal is within the instructions of your mandate. Usually, we negotiate on behalf of someone else, our boss. Are we sure that the deal respects the instructions we were given? Third, check that the deal takes into account important stakeholders. People who are not at the table, so it's easy to forget them, but they are important for the successful and smooth implementation of the deal. It is still time to factor them in. Now, on the problem dimension, 4 checks. Check, of course, that the deal satisfies your motivations. What really is important for you. And usually people do not forget this one. 5. Check that your motivations are better satisfied with this deal than they would be with your plan B, your best solution away from the table. Otherwise, you've wasted your time. 6. Check that the solutions at the table create as much value as possible. Do not leave value creation opportunities on the table. Other ideas may still be included in the deal to make it even more interesting, maybe for both sides of the table. 7. Check that these solutions can be explained thanks to objective justifications. Your hierarchy will ask you why the deal looks like this. For instance, why 8% in a certain contract clause? You cannot simply answer, well, because we thought with the other guy that it was a really nice number. You must be able to provide a reason why you ended up at 8%. Maybe specific stakeholders will also ask you similar questions, and you have to give rational explanations. Now, on the process dimension, 3 last checks. Number 8, check that the implementation of the deal is clearly organized. Who does what, when, etc. Failing to agree on the organization of the execution of a deal means organizing a future failure. 9. That's why you need to check also that there is no misunderstanding. Communication should clearly state rights and obligations of each side. You may also want to discuss communication towards third parties and stakeholders. On a given point of agreement here, do we also agree to let it be known by others? Or do we agree to keep it as discreet as possible? And this may open new room for negotiation. Last but not least, number 10. Check that the logistics, again, is ready for the final validation and signature. Especially in some cultures, a ceremony will be held or drinks will be shared, and you do not want any logistical details to be in the way. If you want to know more about this important issue in negotiation, read chapter 8 of our book, The First Move. And remember, the purpose of a negotiation is not to reach a deal. It is to reach a good deal. Evaluation before decision. That makes the whole difference. Hello. In this video, I would like to discuss with you two crucial questions for any negotiator. Why do so many negotiations fail? And what can you do to avoid this? We've all been confronted with this situation. We've prepared hard for a negotiation, we've spent time at the table, and in spite of our efforts, we have the growing impression that this is going nowhere. Is no deal the only way out? Certainly not. When you think that there's going to be no deal on the table, step back for a second and analyze why, despite your efforts, there is no deal. There might be a good reason, a reason that, like it or not, you have to accept. In this particular negotiation, there could be no zone of possible agreement, no ZOPA, as we call it. Maybe there is no ZOPA because the mandates, the instructions both of you got from your bosses, do not overlap. Maybe there is no ZOPA because your motivations, your priorities, and theirs are strictly at odds. You both want the same thing and for the same reasons. Sometimes there is no ZOPA because the solutions away from the table, your plan B or theirs or both, is better than the solutions anyone can provide. Nobody can match the other's plan B. In these three cases, there is indeed no need to waste further time in the negotiation. Better to close the discussion politely and maintain the relationship for future opportunities. However, research shows, and practitioners confirm, that in many cases, negotiations come to nothing, although a deal was possible. There was a ZOPA, but negotiators failed to find it. That's why it's essential to understand the typical factors of failure in negotiation, and of course, how to cope with them. So let me introduce 10 of them, as they appear when analyzing failed negotiations. The first and most common reason is probably this one. The relationship between the negotiators is so damaged that they fail to interact properly. What can be done? Either improve the relationship before addressing the substance, or change players on both sides, or involve a third party, a mediator. Second, negotiators may fall into the trap of the so-called gorilla syndrome. They try to impress each other so much that rapidly the relationship is damaged. And similarly, negotiators try and impress their boss. They wish to exceed the objectives that their boss gave them to the extent that, in their perception, the ZOPA disappears. What to do? Stick to the facts. Focus on the real objectives and do not try to impress anyone, as it usually backfires. Third, a key player is missing around the table. Without his or her input, you cannot close the deal. The solution is simple. Identify and then invite this relevant stakeholder for part of the negotiation. Fourth, true motivations and needs have not yet been properly understood. So dig deeper. Improve information sharing to help your counterpart better understand why you need something. And help your opposite number do the same through using active questioning. Number 5, no deal sometimes because no satisfactory solutions have been found at the table. Yet, it is still time to try and be more creative. Solutions have to be invented. Engage into brainstorming. Is that all? No, there's a few more to come. Factor 6, excessive anchoring. Negotiators started with extreme demands, which of course cannot be met. And now they're stuck with them. The solution? It's far better to back your demands with objective justifications, using benchmarks and non-deniable facts, and then you stick to them. 7, the process is chaotic. No agenda, no rules, no working methods. Stop discussing the substance and set a process first. 8, running out of time. You did not anticipate how much time you would have, or you've wasted it. The solution is simple. Prepare better in order to focus on what must be said in a concise manner. And always ask at the beginning, well, how long do we have for this meeting? 9, running out of steam. People around the table get exhausted. and because of that they start making mistakes. So it's better to stop, go for a break, get some fresh air, and then start again. 10, the environment is not adequate. You're meeting in an office, and you're constantly interrupted by colleagues or the telephone, and the impact can be disastrous on your opposite number, who doesn't feel he's getting the consideration he should get. So the solution is simple. Take the logistics seriously, book a room, find a better place. So, remember, whenever you feel there's going to be no deal, step back, analyze, in order to understand why there is no deal. And you will usually recognize one or a combination of several of these factors. And then see how to implement the antidote. It might not work, but if you do not try, it will definitely not work and you will remain in the stalemate. Lastly, as a general rule, do not expect to conclude a negotiation session on the binary mode, either no solution or a solution for everything. In important deal making, there will usually be a step-by-step progression. Agreement to meet again. Agreement to meet again and on a certain process. Maybe later you will have the agreement on the disagreement, which is a very important progress. Later on you will have what we call partial agreement. We agree on clause 4, 6 and 7, but on the others we disagree. Contingent agreement. There will be an agreement if certain conditions are met. And then at some point you will reach the final and comprehensive agreement. So now, let's check your memory with a little quiz. So to check your answers, go back through the video once again. Good luck. Most negotiations that take place in the professional environment are indirect. The negotiator intervenes on behalf of someone else. A manager negotiates on behalf of his or her boss. A lawyer negotiates on behalf of his or her client. Even a CEO will negotiate on behalf of his or her board. That means that the negotiator cannot do whatever he wants at the table. He's what we call an agent and must respect the instructions given by his boss, whom we call the principal. These instructions are what we call the negotiation mandate. As a result, most negotiations involving agents will follow a three-step sequence. First, getting instructions from your boss. Second, negotiating while respecting this mandate. Last but not least, coming back to your boss and explaining what you got from the negotiation. In important negotiations, step 1 and 3 will be very formal. In many other negotiations, they tend to be informal or even non-existent. Nevertheless, they're always crucial for you as a negotiator. Before the negotiation, get the right mandate. Be clear and firm on the motivations, the objectives, the priorities, and also on the no-go or red lines not to be crossed in any case. But be reasonably flexible on the solutions in order to let the negotiator maneuver at the table. During the negotiation, do not forget the limits of your mandate. And then back from the negotiation, be prepared to convince your principal. He or she might be disappointed with the results of the negotiation. You will need to sell back the result of your negotiation. Now, consider again this three-step sequence and the two sides of the table. How many agreements do we need for a negotiation to reach a happy ending? We need 5 agreements. First, you need to agree internally beforehand on what is to be achieved within your organization. 2, the same should happen on their side. Well, try and negotiate with someone who disagrees with his or her boss. Complicated. Third, of course, you must agree together at the table. 4, back to the office, you need to convince your boss to endorse the deal. And 5, the other negotiator needs to do the same. And that means something important. If you are so good at the table that you leave nothing interesting for the other negotiator, how can you explain him to be able to convince the real decision maker, his boss? Here, remaining fair in striking the right balance at the table is also a condition for effectiveness. Now, in this video, I would like to insist on the most important part for you as a negotiator. How to avoid a deal which is out of your mandate. Because as a negotiator, this is equivalent to committing suicide. So let me highlight the typical reasons why negotiators go out of their mandate. And here are the reasons analyzed by practitioners and researchers. The most commonplace factor is lack of preparation. In many daily negotiations, you will not have a formal step one with your hierarchy. You will simply do the job the way you think is best. Does it mean that you have no mandate and that you can do whatever you want? Well, of course not. You need to identify yourself in your preparation what the red lines are likely to be. So prepare, prepare, prepare as usual. Another factor is lack of understanding. There are pretty funny experiences showing that nobody wants to look stupid in front of his or her boss. So when the instructions are not understood, people prefer to pretend that they get them right, hoping this won't be too important in the negotiation. So avoid that trap. Better to ask for advice before. Similar is the situation where the mandate was unclear. Again, take step one seriously and clarify your mandate. Now, a more difficult factor is this. The mandate is unrealistic. You understand it? It is clear, but it is really overestimating the target. As a result, you should negotiate your mandate to make it more reasonable, which means that you need to get prepared for step one in order to provide your boss with the real information. Now, what if the mandate is a free hand trap? Your boss tells you, well, now that you've been through that MOOC, you're so good, so go ahead the way you want. Now, the risk is that you negotiate the way you want, but that in step three, your boss tells you, what? This? And no matter how many times you mention, well, but you told me freehand, do it the way you want, in the end, who's right? Your boss. As a result, it is better to be prepared, and as we say, write your own mandate. You study the negotiation ahead of you, and you draft a nice memo which you send to your boss, prompting some feedback. Either you get the feedback and now you have a formal mandate, or you do not get this feedback, but you are in a safer position because you had warned your boss. Another classic case is a situation where the negotiator wanted the deal so badly. The deal was just a little bit out of the mandate. The temptation was so appealing. Remember, better no deal than a deal out of the mandate. Another classic situation, the negotiators went out of their mandate because they were unable to resist the huge pressure from the other side. Remember, your job is to say no if need be, politely but firmly. And what if a new element occurred in the negotiation? Something totally unexpected, which means that your mandate is no longer accurate. Well, better to call for a break and check with your boss. Easy nowadays with all this, new technologies, smartphones, and so on. Now there's a tougher one. You got a mandate, you understand it, but you disagree with the mandate. You think it is the wrong approach. You must try and settle this before, by negotiating the mandate in step one. Otherwise, try and be replaced on the basis that if you're not convinced that by the approach, you're unlikely to be very convincing across the table. So remember all these points to achieve better results in negotiating while protecting yourself as a negotiator. And if you want to know more about this important issue in negotiation, have a look to chapter 7 of the first move. Good luck.